Can you even comprehend it? A tide of 15, even 20 desperate homeless individuals forced to take shelter in this building. A mountain of refuse growing around them. Our windows are shattered, and our residents face a gauntlet of harassment just walking down their own street. Las Vegas sells a glittering lie, a so-called city of dreams built on blinding neon, billion-dollar temples of chance, and the illusion of endless indulgence. But peel back that paper-thin veneer just a few feet from the fantasy, and you'll find the horrifying truth they desperately try to hide. Here, in 2025, the homeless crisis hasn't just worsened. It has detonated into a full-blown humanitarian catastrophe. The very families who once cleaned those hotel rooms now sleep in flimsy tents. The veterans who swore to defend this nation are now left for dead, abandoned to bake under the merciless 115-degree desert sun. This is not the mirage they sell you on television. This is the raw, ugly reality they are fighting tooth and nail to keep you from ever seeing. Do not look away, because what I'm about to reveal will shatter your perception of Sin City forever. Let's start with the surge, this tidal wave of human misery. Imagine walking down the Las Vegas Boulevard at night, the bass thumping from the clubs, tourists cackling over cocktails that cost $20 a pop, and then, a single block over, the illusion shatters. You see it. Endless, desperate rows of hovels pieced together from tarps and broken pallets. This isn't an anomaly. This is the new brutal reality of Vegas. The official ledgers kept by the Southern Nevada Homeless Continuum of Care admit to nearly 8,000 souls on the streets, recorded in Clark County as of early 2025. But talk to the advocates on the ground and they'll warn you the real number is catastrophically higher. This isn't a slow creep, it's a jaw-dropping 56% explosion in just 3 short years. And this is happening while the rest of the nation is actually making progress, while other major cities are reducing their homeless populations. Vegas is not just failing, it's spiraling in the opposite direction. But here's the most devastating part of this story. These aren't strangers who wandered into town. These are the city's own people, the very locals who built this fantasy. The hotel cleaners, the bus drivers, the security guards who once powered the strip. When the lifeblood of tourism dried up, when the international flights and Canadian snowbirds vanished, the fragile service economy of Vegas didn't just crack, it imploded. And when the casinos, the very institutions that provided over 27% of all jobs in the city, faltered, thousands upon thousands were violently shoved from a steady paycheck to the unforgiving pavement. The sheer absurdity of this crisis deepens when you learn that 1 in every 5 of these homeless individuals is still employed. They are grinding out 40 hours a week, yet they can't even afford the city's skyrocketing rents. Not in a place where the average household barely scrapes by on $50,000 a year. Meanwhile, the price of an average home has grotesquely inflated to $364,000. Do the math, that is a staggering 7 times the average income. That's not just unaffordable, it's a cruel joke, light years beyond the recommended 3 to 4 times ratio. And the safety net? It's a lie. For every 100 low-income families in Nevada, there are a pathetic 18 affordable homes, the absolute worst rate in the entire nation. This isn't a gap, it's a chasm, utterly unbridgeable for the working poor. The result is a sickening, unbearable spectacle. Over 150,000 opulent hotel rooms sit empty, their lights glowing, while just beyond their walls, thousands of the city's own workers are forced to sleep on the cold, hard streets. You see them lining up for a charity handout where a single hot meal has become a more desperate gamble, more precious than any jackpot win on the casino floor. Others are driven underground into the storm drains and tunnels just to escape the lethal 115-degree heat. But make no mistake, this is more than an economic downturn. It's a self-perpetuating nightmare. A vicious cycle of despair. Because as the tent cities, the visible scars of this failure, spread closer to the strip, the tourists get nervous. Fewer tourists mean fewer jobs, and fewer jobs mean more families thrown onto the streets, feeding the very crisis that frightens the tourists away. It is a death spiral that even the city's own tourism officials privately admit they can't control. But if the sight of those tents shocks you, brace yourself, because the city's official response is somehow even more horrifying. Instead of offering a hand, they've chosen a fist. They have unleashed brutal crackdowns that don't just clear streets, they obliterate entire lives in a matter of minutes. Which brings us to their monstrous solution, the crackdowns and so-called clearances. I want you to picture this scene. As dawn breaks, a convoy of city trucks descends like a predator upon a sleeping Las Vegas street. City workers swarm out, and in less time than it takes to deal a hand of blackjack, an entire community, fragile homes built of tarps, blankets, and scavenged pallets, is violently torn apart. Everything is treated as trash, heaved into the back of garbage trucks. Life-saving medications, identification cards, irreplaceable family photos. Every last remnant of a person's life is gone, destroyed, forever. And for the human beings who called that place home, their entire world is systematically erased in less time than it takes a tourist to order a mimosa at a strip-side brunch. The city officials have a sanitized name for this brutality. They call them cleanups, a cynical exercise in maintaining the city's image. But ask the victims, and they'll give you the real name for it. A violent, unannounced eviction. Advocacy groups have documented the catastrophic losses, people stripped of the very tools they need to survive, like their driver's licenses, their social security cards, pending job applications, sometimes even the only pair of shoes they own. And without that basic documentation, the path back to stability isn't just difficult, it becomes a sheer impossibility. With every one of these so-called cleanups, the city isn't just failing to help, it's actively kicking people deeper into the abyss of poverty. Let's be clear, these raids were never about solving homelessness. They are about hiding the homeless. It's a calculated strategy. Shove the human suffering out of the tourists' line of sight, preserve the glossy facade at all costs, and simply erase the people who no longer fit the profitable narrative of Sin City. Advocates are screaming from the rooftops, calling this a cruel and pointless charade of displacement. These fragile communities are bulldozed only to reappear elsewhere, awaiting the next inevitable demolition. Every single raid is a calculated assault on human dignity, shattering stability and inflicting deep, lasting trauma. And the sickening irony? The city torches millions on fleeting firework displays that last mere moments, while that very same money could provide the basic humanity of secure lockers, life-saving shelters, or actual housing solutions. Even corporate giants like MGM Resorts and Caesars Entertainment are making token gestures, partnering with charities on pilot programs and locker initiatives. Faint whispers of decency in a hurricane of neglect. But these are microscopic efforts against a colossal, ever-growing crisis. So we must ask the damning question: what truly tarnishes this city's image more? A few tents on the sidewalk, or global broadcasts of city crews treating human beings like trash? Let me be clear, you can bulldoze a tent, but you cannot erase 8,000 souls. And the damage runs far deeper than what is merely seen. Underneath the glitter and the grinding machinery of displacement, a far more insidious crisis is festering. It's an invisible epidemic that can't be captured on camera. A wound that cuts deeper than any legal notice. It is the catastrophic mental health collapse consuming Las Vegas from within. This is the psychological freefall happening just beyond the neon glow. Picture this: a man sits vacant on a fractured pavement, mere feet from the opulent spectacle of the Bellagio fountains. His gaze is a bottomless void, fixed on an abyss only he can see. He's not asking for money. He is utterly still, a statue of despair trapped in a mental vortex with no exit. This man is the human face of a mental health catastrophe this city possesses neither the courage nor the political will to even acknowledge, let alone address. The numbers aren't just sobering, they are a horrifying indictment. The prevalence of mental illness on the streets skyrockets to levels unimaginable to the general population. Yet Nevada's supposed safety net is a national disgrace, one of the most broken in the country. Starved of funds, choked by bureaucracy, and poisoned by stigma, it abandons thousands to suffer in silence. For countless individuals, losing a home isn't just about losing a roof. It's the complete demolition of one's mind and spirit. This raw, untreated trauma inevitably metastasizes into substance use, forging an unbreakable cycle of misery. And here lies the city's most twisted paradox. This city aggressively sells a fantasy of instant riches and fulfilled dreams, while just across the boulevard, its own people are forced into a desperate gamble for their very sanity. Many are driven to self-medicate with whatever they can find, a desperate attempt to numb the agony of scorching heat, gnawing hunger, and soul-crushing humiliation. The result is a catastrophic freefall. Their health collapses, their families disintegrate, and the world of work slams its doors in their faces. The absence of any real support is a deafening, unforgivable silence. It's a national shame. Nevada languishes at the very bottom for mental health care access, with waitlists for help stretching into an eternity of months, a death sentence for hope. In this vacuum, heroic nonprofits are fighting a losing battle, overwhelmed and under-resourced. Even infusions of cash from groups like Kaiser Permanente for therapy and outreach are just sandbags against a tidal wave. These are but fledgling efforts, mere drops of compassion in a vast, raging ocean of desperation. And it's the psychological wreckage that represents the true dark heart of this catastrophe. A meal can quiet a starving stomach, a tent can be replaced, but when hope is systematically eroded, the soul itself begins to starve, leaving wounds that turn these sidewalks into graveyards of broken spirits. And make no mistake, this is the chilling reality. When a city willfully ignores a mental health epidemic, it doesn't just vanish. It festers, and it erupts into the streets as crime. It floods emergency rooms, and it inevitably spills over, poisoning the very tourist fantasy that fuels this city's economy. This forces us to confront the next terrifying truth. What happens when raw desperation crashes head-on with the instinct for survival right on the Strip itself? The answer is crime, fear, and a palpable unease that now haunts the boulevard. In the daylight, Las Vegas Boulevard is a carefully staged spectacle of gleaming security, oblivious tourists sipping frozen drinks, and a network of cameras documenting a sanitized reality. But after dark, an entirely different world claws its way to the surface. A world where the currency of survival isn't casino chips, but shattered car windows, pilfered wallets, and brutal, sudden violence. This isn't just about human suffering. It is a direct catalyst for social instability. As the city shoves more and more people into the margins, an eruption of crime is the inevitable, predictable result. Many of these acts are born of pure survival. A man who hasn't eaten in 2 days isn't a master criminal, he's just hungry. A woman desperate to keep her job might take gas to get there. But these individual acts of desperation create a shockwave that spreads, turning tourists into easy prey and bleeding small businesses dry. A creeping dread now poisons the neighborhoods just beyond the Strip's neon glow. The official numbers from law enforcement paint a grim, undeniable picture. Las Vegas's violent crime rates aren't just high, they consistently soar past the national average. Even the officers on the ground confess that the explosion of these desperate encampments has turned policing into an impossible, chaotic task. And make no mistake, this isn't just about the predictable evils of drug deals or street robberies. This is about something far more terrifying: the sheer, raw unpredictability of human desperation. 1 second, a pedestrian walks past a row of tents, blissfully unaware. The very next, A brutal fight can erupt over a scrap of food or a patch of shade, its violence spilling out onto the polished sidewalks where tourists stroll. The hypocrisy is so thick, you could choke on it. These glittering casinos pour billions into state-of-the-art surveillance to guard plastic chips on a felt table. Yet just outside their gilded doors, thousands of human beings are left utterly defenseless. The city's own residents now whisper that the pedestrian bridges, once safe passages, have become treacherous gauntlets after dark. The very families who power this hospitality machine are now forced to warn their own children. Don't linger downtown when your shift ends. And the tourists? The ones who wander off the beaten path seeking the real Vegas? They stumble upon these scenes of despair and leave utterly shattered, posting viral videos that tear gaping holes in the city's meticulously crafted fantasy. But the glossy image is not the real victim here. The true, devastating cost is paid in human suffering. In this brutal collision of homelessness and crime, the system has erased the line between victim and villain. A man beaten while sleeping on the pavement is then hauled away in cuffs for the crime of existing in the wrong place. A woman escaping a violent home finds herself ticketed for loitering, punished for having nowhere to go. In a city built on the myth of winners and losers, countless souls are being condemned before they're even dealt a hand. And here is the cruel self-inflicted wound. The more these horrifying headlines of crime and decay spread, the more the lifeblood of this city, the tourists, begin to recoil in fear. That hesitation means empty hotel rooms and fewer jobs, which in turn shoves even more desperate residents out onto the very streets they fear. It is a vicious, cannibalistic cycle, tightening like a noose around the city's throat. And yet, the street crime is merely the symptom. Peel back that layer and you find a disease just as virulent: the soul-crushing cost of survival in Las Vegas. Forget the blackjack tables. For most people here, the biggest gamble is just trying to exist. It's the impossible game of trying to pay rent. This is the brutal economic squeeze that is systematically forcing the city's own people into the gutter. Remember the promise of Las Vegas? It was the one place on earth where anyone, regardless of their bank account, could feel like royalty, if only for a weekend. It was a city of cheap buffets and, crucially, affordable homes. Wages here once went further than in the coastal metropolises, making it a sanctuary for working-class families. But now, in the year 2025, that dream hasn't just died. It has spectacularly imploded. Today, the same hands that serve you a $10 cocktail, the same people who clean your luxury suite, are forced to sleep in flimsy tents just a stone's throw from the opulence they maintain. The numbers themselves tell a story of pure brutality. The average household here scrapes by on roughly $50,000 a year, and yet the median price for a home has exploded to an astronomical $364,000. That is more than 7 times what the average family earns in a year, a catastrophic deviation from the 3-to-1 safety ratio that financial experts warn is the absolute limit. The cost to simply rent a roof over your head has surged with such ferocity that even a full-time job is no longer a shield against homelessness. For every 100 low-income families in Nevada, there are a pathetic 18 affordable homes available. That is the single worst rate in the entire nation. Let that sink in. Here, in the land of opportunity, the game is rigged from the start. Hard work means nothing when the house always wins. Just listen to the heartbreaking story of a 55-year-old housekeeper, a woman who toils away inside these very hotels for a meager $8 an hour. She endures 9-hour shifts 6 days a week, only to bring home a paltry $800 a month. With that pittance, she asks, her voice breaking, "Where else can I possibly sleep but on the cold, hard streets?" And here is the sickest irony of all. She spends her days inside one of the city's 150,000 gleaming luxury hotel rooms. Yet, after her shift, she is denied the basic human dignity of a single safe room of her own. And don't you dare think this is just about the lowest paid workers. This economic vice is crushing facing service workers at every level. The bartenders, the cooks, the casino dealers, even the construction crews who build this city. All of them trapped in a wage bracket between a pitiful $7.25 and a barely survivable $17.50 an hour. Their pay has remained frozen in time for years, while the cost of everything, rent, power, food, has absolutely skyrocketed. Families that once had the security of a modest apartment have been ruthlessly priced out, cast into a desperate spiral that leads from seedy weekly motels to the backseat of a car, and finally to the ultimate degradation, a tent on the side of the road. This catastrophic crisis of affordability has created a paradox so stark it defies belief. On one side of the street, you have tourists thoughtlessly dropping thousands of dollars on a single hand of blackjack. And on the other, you have the city's own residents standing in desperate lines where a single hot meal has become a prize more precious than any casino jackpot. That gut-wrenching image, those lines of hungry people just steps from Michelin-starred restaurants, screams the truth that no glossy marketing campaign can ever silence. And this is the terrifying endgame. When the basic human right of housing becomes an impossible dream, this is the terrifying moment homelessness ceases to be a personal failing and is exposed for what it is. A structural, systemic crisis, a gaping maw that now devours even the employed. And this reality forces us to ask an even more chilling question. When the sheer cost of survival is already grinding people into dust, what happens when you unleash another brutal force upon them? The unforgiving, relentless weapon that is the Las Vegas desert climate. What happens when they face the scorching heat and the lethal reality of this environment? Make no mistake, Las Vegas isn't just fighting poverty, it's locked in a desperate war against the desert itself. In the summer of 2025, the Strip became a furnace, with temperatures rocketing to a blistering 115 degrees Fahrenheit, a horrifying 46 degrees Celsius, and the oppressive heat refused to surrender even to the darkness of night. Can you even conceive of trying to find rest in a sweltering tent, with no escape from the heat? On asphalt that bakes you from below like a skillet? For thousands of abandoned residents, this isn't discomfort, it's a death sentence. And the sickening irony? While tourists luxuriate in climate-controlled suites and pristine infinity pools, the city's forgotten people are forced to huddle under overpasses, scramble into storm drains, or desperately cling to the smallest sliver of shade. In their desperation, many are driven into the subterranean sewer tunnels beneath the glittering city. Pitch black, treacherous voids that can become raging torrents in mere minutes during a flash flood. These tunnels, once romanticized as some hidden world of survival, are now the last desperate refuge for human beings who can no longer withstand the relentless, punishing heat of the world above. Let's be perfectly clear. This heat isn't just an inconvenience. It's a weapon. Dehydration, heat stroke, and utter exhaustion are not just risks. They are the constant, stalking predators of the street. Behind closed doors, local hospitals are admitting a silent, horrifying surge in emergency cases. People literally collapsing on the sidewalks, their bodies ravaged by heat. And the most tragic part? Some don't even survive long enough to be found. Denied stable shelter, ice, or even a drink of clean water, the desert transforms into a silent, merciless executioner. And the ultimate unforgivable irony? The very city that burns enough power to be seen from space claims it cannot provide the most basic cooling shelters for its most vulnerable citizens. It's fallen to underfunded nonprofits to wage this war, scrambling to distribute bottled water and cheap portable fans. But these are mere drops in an ocean of suffering. As one exhausted volunteer grimly stated, "We're out here fighting the desert with plastic bottles, while the casinos burn millions on fireworks." And the looming specter of climate change is amplifying this nightmare, unleashing heat waves that strike earlier and cling on for longer. This onslaught is stretching what was once a 3-month summer into nearly half a year of brutal, life-threatening conditions. For those without a home, every single extra day of heat is a roll of the dice with death. And here we arrive at the most chilling paradox of all. Las Vegas markets itself to the world as a vibrant escape, a fantasy land where people come to feel truly alive. But for the thousands living on its streets, the brutal climate of the Mojave Desert is twisting that fantasy into a daily, inescapable death sentence. Yet as lethal as the sun is, another force is dragging people into the abyss. A far more insidious enemy, one you can't see but is just as destructive. The crushing, inescapable vortex of addiction and poverty. Addiction. Poverty. An unbreakable, vicious cycle. Dare to walk just one block off the glittering strip, and the city's sickening paradox slaps you in the face. These casinos spend billions of dollars meticulously engineering psychological traps, environments designed to compel visitors to gamble, to drink, to lose themselves in excess. Yet just outside their doors, thousands of residents are trapped in a high-stakes gamble for their very lives, a game they never chose to play. Here, addiction isn't some tourist attraction. For the homeless, it has become a twisted tool for survival. But this brand of survival demands the ultimate price: everything they have left. For a person sleeping on the pavement, a cheap bottle of liquor or a quick hit is a desperate attempt to silence the gnawing hunger, to numb the terror, to escape the soul-crushing despair of being treated as invisible. The relief, however, is a cruel mirage. Their health deteriorates, their human connections shatter. Any chance of a job evaporates and they spiral deeper into the abyss of poverty. And just when they need help the most, they discover the so-called safety nets. The mental health clinics, the rehab centers, the social workers are already broken, overwhelmed, leaving thousands utterly abandoned. And this horrifying cycle isn't rare. It's the norm. The data screams the truth. Reports confirm that the rates of substance use disorder among the Las Vegas homeless population are catastrophically higher than the national average. And what is the city's response? Not compassion, but cold, cruel judgment. People glance at a human being on the sidewalk and instantly condemn them for laziness or moral collapse. What their willful ignorance blinds them to are the real stories. The devastating job loss when a casino shut down, the untreated trauma of a military veteran, the predatory rent hikes that threw an entire family onto the street. The entire casino-driven economy is built on this grotesque paradox. Las Vegas has always glorified and sold the fantasy of excess. Unrestrained gambling, endless drinking, high-stakes thrills. But when that very culture infects the lives of the city's most vulnerable, the glamour evaporates, revealing the horrifying reality: state-sanctioned self-destruction. Make no mistake, every relapse, every arrest isn't just one person's tragedy. It's a shockwave that shatters families, threatens public safety, and poisons the very economy this city worships. Into this void, nonprofits and faith-based groups are throwing everything they have: food banks, counseling, outreach, a desperate, noble attempt to hold back the tide. Even corporate giants like Kaiser Permanente have dipped their toes in the water, launching pilot initiatives to provide mental health and addiction services for the unhoused, a flicker of hope in an overwhelming darkness. But these efforts are a drop in the ocean, starved for funds while billions are lavished on the tourism machine. The scales of justice aren't just tipped, they're shattered. Let's be brutally honest. You cannot throw dice to escape poverty, and you cannot numb despair into submission. Until Las Vegas confronts its demons, the root causes, the lack of housing, stagnant wages, and ignored mental health crises will continue to fuel a monstrous cycle that grinds human beings into dust. And while this cancer eats away from the inside, an even more sinister force attacks from the outside, making street life a living hell. Brutal city crackdowns that don't just tear down tents, they obliterate identities. This catastrophic collision of human survival and heartless policy brings us to our number 2. The war on the poor, the weaponization of enforcement, and the calculated destruction of human dignity. Every city has rules, but here in Las Vegas, those rules are a verdict, deciding who is worthy of being seen and who must be rendered invisible. The official line? They're just maintaining order, just preserving the strip's image. But in reality, these policies are a systematic assault designed to strip the homeless not just of their meager shelters, but of their very soul. The attacks are swift and merciless, coming in waves. At dawn, without a whisper of warning, cleanup crews descend. Tents are ripped open. Possessions are violently heaved into garbage trucks. Life-saving medications, identification, even the last cherished family photos, all gone in a matter of minutes. For someone teetering on the brink, this isn't a setback. It's a death sentence. Without that ID, you are a ghost. You can't get a job, you can't access benefits, you can't even find refuge in a shelter. Instead of offering a hand up, these policies are a boot on the neck, pushing people deeper into the abyss. And the city's defense? A chillingly pragmatic claim that it's all necessary to protect tourism. After all, how can this city sell its fantasy as the entertainment capital if paying tourists have to witness the grim reality of tent cities outside their opulent hotels? But advocates scream the truth. This has nothing to do with solving the problem. It's about sanitizing the view. Encampments are violently uprooted and shuffled from one street corner to the next, a grotesque shell game where the root cause is never, ever touched. As one activist chillingly put it, it's a sick game of musical chairs played with human lives. Meanwhile, new city laws make it a crime to loiter, to camp, to simply exist in public spaces, effectively outlawing poverty itself. The terrifying outcome? People are thrown in jail for the simple act of trying to survive. And here is the ultimate sickening paradox. The city pours millions into policing its most vulnerable citizens, yet invests a pittance of that amount in actual housing solutions. This isn't a mistake. It's a deliberate choice that exposes their priorities. And compassion is nowhere on the list. Now, glimmers of what they call progress are appearing. Unlikely partnerships between nonprofits and casino empires like MGM Resorts and Caesars Entertainment are supposedly exploring alternative solutions. We're talking about safe lockers, a few temporary shelters, some pilot housing programs. But let's be clear, these are tiny, fragile experiments, not the sweeping systemic reform that is desperately needed. Until that power balance shifts, brutal enforcement will remain the hammer, and the homeless will always be the nail. And this raises a truly haunting question. If a city can burn millions of dollars on fireworks that explode and vanish in 10 minutes, why is it incapable of investing in human dignity that can last a lifetime? The answer is as cynical as it is simple. Policies are designed to manufacture perception. And in a city whose entire economy is built on a tourist-fueled fantasy, perception is everything. And that brings us to the highest stakes gamble this city has ever faced: the very survival of Las Vegas. This is our final point. Number 1, the survival gamble. Can this city truly confront its darkest hour? For decades, Las Vegas peddled a single seductive myth: that here you could roll the dice and change your destiny. But in 2025, the most desperate gamble isn't happening at any casino table. It's the life or death bet being made by thousands of its own people, just trying to survive one more day on these unforgiving streets. And this gamble isn't just reshaping lives, it's deciding the very future of the city. The grotesque spectacle is impossible to ignore. Mere steps from a 5-star hotel, a ragged line of tents cuts across the strip like an open, festering wound. On one side of this invisible wall, tourists indulge in $25 cocktails, bathed in the glow of neon fantasies. On the other, there was only silence, suffocating despair, and the vacant stare of the forgotten. This isn't just a wealth gap. It is a chasm separating dignity from degradation, opportunity from oblivion. It is the death of the American dream, right here, in plain sight. And this is the terrifying cycle it creates. The abomination of homelessness is now spilling into plain sight, and the tourists are recoiling. Their hesitation triggers a vicious cycle. Fewer bookings, decimated jobs, and even more desperate residents thrown out of their homes. Economists are sounding the alarm. Las Vegas is trapped in a catastrophic death spiral, a self-feeding collapse where the very tourist industry that built this city is now being devoured by the very crisis it callously created. And unlike every other downturn, this time Vegas may not be able to bluff its way out. While cities from New York to Miami are desperately fighting this plague, Las Vegas has, in stark contrast, watched its own homeless population horrifically double in just 3 years. Without a radical, immediate intervention in affordable housing, mental health care, and livable wages, this famed city of lights is in grave danger of being extinguished forever. The irony is sickening. A place that built its legend on endless reinvention is now staring down an existential dead end. Because a city cannot be a beacon of light while its own people are abandoned to the darkness. A city cannot boast of prosperity when its workers can't even afford a place to sleep. And a city cannot gamble away human dignity indefinitely without ultimately losing everything. And so the terrifying question remains, will Las Vegas finally rise to this moral challenge? Or will the entertainment capital of the world finally collapse under the crushing weight of its own hollow illusions? The stakes have never, ever been higher. The biggest gamble in town is no longer about money. It's about survival itself. And the outcome will decide whether Las Vegas has a future or if it becomes America's most dazzling cautionary tale. Las Vegas constructed its glittering empire on the promise of dreams come true. But for today, an unforgivable number of its own residents are trapped in a living nightmare. If this city refuses to confront this crisis head on, its iconic neon glow will one day flicker and die. What do you believe? Can this city still be saved from itself? Render your verdict below and be sure to subscribe for more investigations that refuse to look away.